and
Yeah, I've hidden the nails completely hidden.
I just wanted to ask you if we're going to have the rules for the use of the hammer tonight.
Actually, now that you say it, George,
some people are a hammer looking for a nail.
now that you say it, and you actually end up seeing what my topic is, you actually get a laugh. And wonder why did, why did this topic come up, and how did we get to this topic? So that's going to be a good giggle when we see that. Awesome. Okay, Leonie, welcome. Everybody, welcome. It's good to have everybody here. I'm busy with laundry, so don't mind. Okay, no, that's good. You don't have to air your laundry on this. I don't need to go viral because you've aired your laundry. Henry, thanks.
I just think for Doc Anthony's safety, we'll have to give Dr. Michelle a rubber mallet, not a metal mallet.
A 4-pounder, Fernando. I need a 4-pound hammer.
No, we still like Doc Anthony the way he is.
Absolutely. No, I have to agree with you.
Take it, buddy. I take it.
Awesome. Glad you made it. Okay, let's share screen. Share screen is that one. Yes. Share, yes. And then where's going to find all these things? There we go. Okay. So Doc's going to have a good old chuckle now when he sees my topic. And my topic this evening is how to have a godly fight. Interesting, hey? He's just been an hour on a conversation with other people talking about this, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, there's my recap. Okay, so what we're going to look at is, because we've had all of our conflict and our hammer hitting and all the rest of it, I'm going to teach you how to hit with a hammer in a godly way so that we can make sure that everything gets done correctly. All right. Okay, so one of the things that I've discovered is that conflict resolution is a way for two people or parties to find a peaceful solution to a disagreement among themselves. Now, most people go into conflict, but very few people go into conflict resolution. And so when we look at conflict resolution, it should be, how do I resolve the issue, not how do I fight the issue? So most disagreements, they can be around personal, financial, political, emotional, whatever the disagreement is. When the dispute arises, the best course of action is to actually look at how do we resolve this disagreement. And so that is why it's called conflict resolution, because it's about the resolution, not the conflict. And if more and more people could understand this, and if we could teach children now, Ant and I, when we first got married, and as you can see, we actually hit people with hammers or steal each other's hammers and things like that. But we realized that we needed a mechanism to resolve conflict. Because if we don't have a mechanism to resolve conflict, we're going to be doing one of 5 different things. Okay, and we're going to look at how we actually can fall into 5 different strategies. So when we look at this square, and you know me, I love all my squares and my quadrants and that kind of thing. But if we look at the square on the left-hand side, we've got the assertiveness scale, which means that we can go from being unassertive to being assertive. All right. And then at the bottom of the scale is uncooperative to being very cooperative. So that's the scale of cooperativeness. Okay. And so when we're looking at conflict, we can hop into these 5 areas, and for different reasons we would do that. So if I have a look at the first one, which is actually avoiding, which really means that I'm unassertive and I'm uncooperative. In other words, we just ignore, we withdraw from the conflict and just disappear. We're not interested in it at all. Okay. Now, what happens with that is that we sometimes choose this method if we are uncomfortable with any form of confrontation. And sometimes when the discomfort of the confrontation exceeds the potential reward of resolving the conflict, we will then go into avoiding. So I've just been talking about that with one individual that I know, that everybody's avoiding conflict with this person because it's so much easier to stay in the discomfort than it is to actually attempt the resolution. So when conflict is avoided, then we know that nothing can be resolved. So you need to make a decision. If I'm going to step into the avoiding the conflict space on a particular issue, you need to weigh up the pros and cons, because it's bound to happen again if there's no resolution to that particular conflicting situation, and it is going to reoccur. And then you need to ask yourself, how much am I willing to live with? All right, so some of us will end up fitting into that avoiding place. The second one is what we call the contemplating. Okay, contemplating, listen to me, completing. Okay, competing, not completing. Okay, so it's a competing stage. In other words, it's a win at all costs. Okay, so it's not completing, it's competing. Where they're very assertive, but they're not cooperative at all. All right. And this method is characterized by the assumption that only one side wants to win and everybody else loses. So therefore, let's have a look here. I just want to see. Yeah, keep away from the hammer. Absolutely. I agree with you. So it doesn't allow room for diversified perspectives. There's only one informed picture, and not everybody is allowed to actually share their points of view. So competing works very nicely when it's in the sports arena or in war, for example, but it's not a good strategy when trying to resolve conflict. So when we are on that scale where we're uncooperative and we're being extremely assertive about an issue, it means that we're competing and we need to win at all costs. Not a good place to be. So the first one is avoiding. The second one was competing. Okay. The other one is accommodating. Now, accommodating is all about being unassertive, but very cooperative. And this strategy can work, but it gives way to the competing person, for example, to their wishes or their demands, and you don't take yourself into consideration. So sometimes being accommodating is not a wise thing to do, but sometimes to cooperate in order to and be unassertive might be the thing that you need in a conflict situation before you get to the conflict resolution situation. So it might be great to accommodate someone in order to diffuse the anger or the volatility of them. Okay, and it's a gracious way of doing that and making sure that you just, or alternatively, you could be saying, hold on a second, I'm just out of here, I'm not interested. Okay, so then that's just abdicating your responsibility to resolve conflict. Okay, and it's less helpful when one party accommodates another merely to preserve harmony or to avoid disruption. Then it's not useful at all. Okay, so avoidance, for example, is going to end up in a lot of unresolved issues. And so accommodating sometimes cannot be the right way. So we've looked at avoiding, which is assertive and uncooperative. Sometimes it's good to be there, and sometimes it's good to be in accommodating, which is cooperative and still unassertive. It all depends on who the volatile person is at that point in time. Then you're competing. It just means you want to win at all costs. And the only time it's really worth competing with others, especially in relationships, would be in a game, sports, that kind of thing. Okay. Now, the fourth one that we can look at is collaboration. So collaboration is that you're being extremely cooperative, but also assertive. So collaboration is a method used when both parties, okay, have the ability to step into an assertive space and a cooperative space. Because this way you learn about each other's perspectives, you allow each other to actually speak, because that comes with the cooperativeness, and the assertiveness allows you to voice your opinion, okay? And quite often in a collaborating space, you can actually find some resolution, okay? Not always, because yeah, now we both have a hammer. Exactly, but I'll go back to the competing side and say my hammer's bigger. But yes, so at this collaboration, a lot of diffusing of the conflict can happen, but not necessarily the resolution found. And a lot of people think because they've come to a space of collaboration that the conflict has now been resolved. and therefore they don't actually look for a resolution should this conflict re-arise. Okay, and that's what we ultimately want to be looking at. We ultimately want to get to that space where both parties feel that compromising becomes a strategy. So out of collaboration comes compromising, where we're not too assertive to put our point of view, and we're not overly cooperative. So it becomes a strategy where we're partially assertive and partially cooperative. In other words, the concept is to give everybody a little bit of what they want and not everything to one person. And that way there's a win-win-win affirmative action. So it is all about the win-win-win situation. In other words, I feel that I've won. Anthony feels like he's won, but we've won more so because we've actually dealt with the resolution so the issue doesn't reoccur again. Okay, so that is very important. Absolutely, a synergy would come in, Leonie, 100%. So it's perceived to be fair, and it's perceived that both parties feel that there is a final outcome to that. So those are the 5 different spaces that we jump into whenever we're resolving conflict. Now, what will be interesting is to actually take this chart or these 5 points and say to yourself, who do I avoid conflict with? Who am I accommodating with? Who do I compete with? All right. Who mostly do I have collaboration, and who do I spend time actually compromising so there's actually a resolution? And it'll be very interesting to see where and who and the type of person, because the next thing would be to say, hold on a second, this is my personality profiling. Based on my personality profiling, I would have a tendency to go and slip into avoiding the conflict, because that's where my profiling sits as an introvert or an extrovert, and I'll ask Anne to elaborate on that just now. Whereas competing would definitely fit 100% into somebody else's personality profiling. And so it's very interesting how we would know what type of people we are avoiding, because if we know exactly who we're avoiding, we'll know how to actually get myself out of that avoidance, or out of the accommodating, or even out of the competing, into the collaborating, compromising situation. Okay. Before I go on to how we have this fight or how we should deal with it, anybody want to say anything or any suggestions? Do you want to mention now about the...
I don't want to be first, but I had a big aha there. Come, anybody else first?
All good? Okay, go for it, Doc.
All right, the one thing I saw is the blind spot of collaboration. That was a big aha for me. Because with collaboration, you think the conflict has been resolved because we're working together, we're collaborating. But it actually doesn't mean that you have solved the conflict. That to me is a massive aha.
Or found a resolution so the conflict doesn't reoccur.
Correct. Because you think that you're collaborating, but the true resolution is not in place. The methodology has not been decided upon, and it can resurface. So I wrote here, collaboration for me is the blind side of you thinking you have resolved something, but you haven't. Competing is very easy to understand. I mean, Michelle and I compete. It's not even, everybody knows that. It's a healthy competition. In fact,
and I win.
Oh yeah, she wins all the time. Absolutely.
See, George agrees. He knows he's right now. He's avoiding. He's just going, yeah.
He's avoiding. You know when to stay out, eh?
But like,
I think that,
yeah.
it's like when you're in a restaurant, and the waiter asks you, how do you like your steak, sir? And then you tell him, like, it's like, I like it like winning an argument with my wife. So the waiter says, rare it is, sir.
Rare it is, George.
Rare it is.
Oh,
Well
brilliant.
done,
Is a
George.
good one.
Excellent. That's good. So yeah, do you want? Let's talk about the personality.
Talk about the personality while I've got
Okay.
the square. Just funny, hey,
Here's the
Liz?
truth that there is. This is not written in stone, but there happens to be a very good spotting of the 4 personality types. The D types, the drivers, will find themselves a lot with competing, but it's competing more for power. It's a different competing, and the second style that would be also be competing is the I, but it's more the D. The I's would be competing for visibility in terms of who's more important. When you get to collaborating, that is definitely a high I trait, because they tend to, I wouldn't say it's false, but they've got this pretend, oh, it's fine, everything's fine, and they smile and they make up and they hug. That's collaborating. That is a true high I. So the first, the I's will do that, and the second will do is the I's, which are the influencers, and the third person for next person for collaborating will be an S. S is like to collaborate and rather work with people. That will be your phlegmatic. Then when it comes to accommodating, that is straight on. Your S is the highest person. They become accommodating all the time. The second person that will become accommodating is your C, but it's an SC combination mostly. Then avoiding clearly is your high C. They just avoid it at all costs, because why? Because remember, they are always right.
So what's the point of arguing?
What's the point of arguing? You're always right. So that happens to be a combination of avoiding will be a CS combination. So there you can see most of them have got sort of 2 attached to it and sort of lensed it to itself. And it has got, here's the key, assertive. Can you see that at the top? The competing, collaborating are the assertive types, because the D and the I are assertive styles. And can you see that the avoiding and accommodating is the C and the S's are the unassertive behavioral types. Let's look at cooperativeness. And that's it. Uncooperative versus cooperative. There's no, it doesn't mean who you are. It can be any one of those 4. There it's not as style specific. It is behavior specific in terms of the result of what you've achieved. So only the assertive, unassertive can be used in terms of behavior, but the cooperativeness had to do with the result of how it is applied.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Great. So now I'm going to give you a way that we can actually end up having a really good fight. Okay. And seriously, and I have been using this for as long as I can ever remember. Okay. And you know, Ant is the king of acronyms. So we've been using this probably since 1998, 97, 98. Okay. So FIGHTS. I'm going to give you the fights principle, how to have a good fight. Okay. And the first way is to face each other. Because it's pointless when most people are in an argument. The husband could be sitting in the lounge and the wife in the kitchen, and they're shouting at each other, or one down the passageway, or whatever it might be. That doesn't help towards resolving conflict. So when you're about to embark on the fights principle, the most important thing to realize is I need to get myself into a state where I'm ready to take myself through this process. In other words, I can't be angry. I've sent myself to the room. So, you know, if you're fighting with your children, sometimes it's your fault and you should go to the room, because they actually were peacefully sitting in the lounge until you got home from work. Okay. So sometimes you're going to send yourself to the room and go and debrief yourself and pull yourself towards yourself, then come out of the room again. And then when it's time to spend in this resolving of the issue, it then says, okay, now let's sit down and face each other. That way you can see each other's expressions. There's no rolling of the eyes or whatever it might be, and you can actually study each other's body language from that perspective. The I is for isolate the issue. Isolate the issue. Now, it's important for us to realize that when you're isolating the issue, it is one topic at a time. So if we're having conflict over the fact that Anthony doesn't know how to reverse his car, and he always reverses it, and he's like shaking his head at me. I can't say every time you reverse, or when you had this car and when you had that car, and do you remember when you last reversed in 1922 that you bumped the car? Okay, the issue where he bumped the car has nothing to do with the conversation that we're having right now. So when you isolate an issue, it is important to get both people to understand what is it that we're going to talk about. So we would then have, and we had it in our we called it the pillow on the floor method, because we had a pillow that had a plastic sleeve on it. And then what we would do is we would actually agree, okay, we're going to talk about the fact that
I reverse too fast.
He reverses too fast. Okay. And with that, it causes me anxiety because I think he's going to bang the car. Okay. That's the issue. And we write it down and then we agree that that's what we're going to talk about. And then we start the conversation, and either one of us are not allowed to bring any history or secondary topic to the table. Okay. Moenie ou koeie uit die sloot grawe nie. Okay. That's as bad as don't bury the dog with its tail out so that you can put it out to play with. Very similar. Okay.
Yeah, quite correct.
Yeah, no, you've got to bury that cow. Koe is a cow, eh?
That's correct.
Okay. So yeah, so that is what it is all about. And it's so important when you're embarking on resolving the issue, that this clarification on the resolution that you want to resolve that doesn't come back up again gets written down, and both understand before you even start a conversation.
Okay, now here's the natural thing, and I want you to iron it out for us right now. The problem we agreed on that's not on the sleeve that we're talking about is that I'm reversing too fast. Guess what's the first thing that's going to be said? But you reverse fast. Now, how do you handle it with the isolate the issue?
Well, very simple, because firstly, when we get to the other ones, I'll explain to you how to do that. Okay. So the next one is G for guard your tongue. Guys, when we are in conflict, and it's important for us to all realize, is that we should not call each other names, hateful things, hurtful things, because we've always got to remember that even though we're at this point where we're trying to resolve conflict right now, we're still tender about the subject. So to call each other names or try and belittle each other to make yourself feel better does not help the situation. So rather, if you're about to say something nasty or derogatory or belittling to the other person, bite your tongue. Okay, make a decision that we are going to guard our tongue and not, okay, in any way whatsoever say anything nasty about each other. Okay, so that's the guard your tongue. Now to answer your question, Ant, it's the next one is H is halt history. All right, halt history. In other words, do not bring anything in that is, unless you ask permission, then you've got to say, can I please, the reason why this is causing me so much anxiousness is, can I refer to what happened when this, yes or no? And then Ant has the choice to say, no, I'm terribly sorry, you're not bringing that topic into the conversation. Let's stick with this one right now.
Yeah.
Have I, and then he could say, have I in the last, and then you're going to say, okay, we have to talk about that last issue. Okay, so you've got to get agreement on if you're bringing in the dog, with pulling the dog out of with his tail, or the cow, whatever you're doing with the cow. Okay, so please halt history. Then the T is for tune in with empathy. Because remember, the whole why we're doing this is because we need to come up with a resolution so that this issue doesn't happen again. So one, you cannot be doing this when you're angry. You've got to go and time out yourself. So the important thing is to say, listen, time out principle, you apply the same as you know, the big T, time out. I can't be discussing this right now, but we need to discuss it. Then you make an appointment to discuss it and say, listen, look, we need to discuss this because you know this is going to resurface. Guys, too many people think that, okay, we're hunky-dory now, it's resolved, they're never going to have, and that goes into where we fall short in collaboration. We need to say, no, we're going to talk about this because we want to make sure that it never arises again. And this happens a lot with children. And this principle is really good if you have teenagers in the house. When the one wears the other one's t-shirt, I told you you're never going to wear that t-shirt again. And then they have a big fight about the t-shirt. And then you've got to sit down and say, what are the rules and regulations that we're going to imply so that you don't take your sister's t-shirt without asking permission. So these are the reasons why we use this in the workplace. We've used this in so many areas in order to resolve conflict. In fact, this is our number one tool that we teach to resolving conflict in workplace, actually in everywhere, because it's so easy for people to remember. So tune in with empathy. Always, and empathy says you're willing to look at the other person's perspective. All right, so from that, so it's not sympathy, it's empathy. Then the S is stick in there until you have success. Now, this is where we say, the Bible says, never let the sun go down in your anger. All right, I'm just going to stop sharing. So it says, don't go to bed, never let the sun go down in your anger, or don't go to bed before your son, what is it? You're the pastor. Exactly.
Right.
Okay. All right. So I said, right. Okay. But what we've got wrong about that, we've said we need to resolve the conflict before we go to bed. And that's not what it says. It says that you and I need to deal with the anger in our heart. In other words, we need to go and send ourselves to the room. We need to debrief ourselves. We need to make sure that we're not angry anymore before we go to bed, which means me. It doesn't mean that I need to now sit until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning going round and round and round on a topic because I'm angry and you're not seeing my point of view, and I step into the competing mode of conflict resolution. It means that we can literally in 40 minutes, 30 minutes, actually resolve conflict when we know what the issue is. We're coming from a place of wanting this not to reoccur again. And also we're in a place where we've dealt with our anger. Okay. And at any point in time when one gets angry, which means they're not guarding their tongues, they start shouting, you can say, hey, time out. When I'm not discussing this until such time, because I want to have a compromising resolution that fits this here. And so our very first topic that we chose, so when we first realized that we had issues, we went and wrote down all the things that we were upset with each other about. Well, I wrote 3 foolscap pages of what was wrong with Anthony. Okay, and he only wrote, I think, 1 or half a foolscap page of what was wrong with me. So you can see that my glass was half empty, his glass was half full. Then we prioritized them and we said, okay, what's the top one we want to talk about? That was on both papers. And it literally took us 3 weeks of an hour sitting, chatting about it, until then going away, thinking about it, seeking advice from people, coming back again, until we found what was the resolution for this issue never to happen again. And it took us 3 weeks to resolve it. And this is where I think that we get it wrong, is that we step into the collaboration, and we think after the first hour, oh good, everybody feels good about it, and off we go. And then 2 years down the line, a year down the line, or whatever it is, the issue happens again, or it could be a month, and then there's this one on top of that one, and that's when things blow out and we don't have anything. So stick with that topic until you both agree that, okay, we have a resolution and we know exactly what this is. And guys, what we have to do is we need to realize that our families are in actual fact a business. So if we do conflict resolution in the workplace, we should be doing conflict resolution in the house. And we should be doing conflict resolution with our family and with our friends, should there be a conflict. And it is about saying, it's not about belittling anybody. It's just that I don't want this to happen again. Right, so that's me. That's what I wanted to teach you today, was just to say we fit into 5 different spaces when we go into conflict, and who are we doing what with. But then most importantly, you now have a mechanism to say, hold on a second. Now you don't have to tell somebody else that you're going through the fights. You could just say, for example, if I was doing it with my sister who has no clue what the fights principle is, I could say to her, look, love to discuss this because I love you dearly and I don't want this to reoccur, because I'm probably the one that's going to mess up. So bring the blame to you instead of the you, bring it to yourself. So while we're having this conversation, can we avoid maybe swearing at each other, telling each other we're stupid idiots or whatever? If we could just have a decent conversation and not do anything else like that. And they could say yes. Say, fantastic. Can we only talk about just last week, Thursday, when this happened? I don't care about what happened before. Can we just talk about that? Yes, we can. Then write it down. So you can see you're doing the FIGHTS principle, but you're hopping around the topics, and then you can say, right, let's face each other. And now you've gone through the F, we're facing each other, the isolating the issue, the guarding of the tongue, the halting of history, and tune in with empathy, and then stay in there until you find a resolution. And it's a simple, because you can do it on your hand, FIGHT, and then remember, thumbs up is the S, thumbs up, stay in there until it's finished. Okay. Now, Anthony's got visual signs that he uses, but this is Anthony, so I will give him the opportunity to share the visual signs with you. Not everybody uses the visual signs, because if you did some of these signs to me, I'll sign back to you.
Okay, I just believe that if you and your wife are in agreement that this is your methodology, that because it's an agreed agreement, when either of the two actually are breaking what you've already agreed, it is helpful to help the person understand where you believe they are maybe erring at that point in time. Now, I believe that the sign language that we have is helpful to do that. So I'm first going to explain to you how it is. Face each other, just go, let's face each other. But if you go like, that's not the idea, because then she's going to say to choose a finger.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, okay, so it's like, can we face each other? And especially if the topic runs to another topic. I just put up one finger.
Yeah,
I said the issue.
No.
And if we're busy like just no, let's ask them, because we've agreed this is our methodology. And if she stops on saying, hold on, we agreed so let's first talk about this one and solve it. Is that okay? Right. That's the issue. But what I do is I use the sign language without having to talk to her to make her feel that she's doing something wrong, or she does it to me without me having to feel something wrong. But it's just so we know, okay, not isolating the issue. Then we just touch our mouths. Guard your tongue. No, don't call
Instead of saying, don't you ever speak to me like that.
Yeah.
Just you shut up and you just do this.
Just do this. And then we do this. Halt history. Halt history. And then we go tune in. It's like just like tune in like a radio, tune in. And obviously stick in there, thumbs up until there's success. So if I can just quickly repeat that, and you might want to repeat it with me. So here we go. F is face each other. I, isolate the issue. G, guard your tongue. H, halt history. T, tune in. S, stick in there. All right, so it's as easy as that. And the whole idea is to use it to help your partner. And I can tell you which of the two that come up. Isolate the issue or halt history.
All the time.
Guys, you can be a master of conflict if you stick to this as an agreement between each other. We will isolate the issue. We won't bring in history, because then you can solve any problem. Yeah, it took Michelle out quite a while to actually sort it out, but we had so this is our written, we have in writing with signatures that we've agreed that this is our methodology when we have a fight, not if, when we fight, because that's it.
And have a mechanism, and it's nice to teach young couples as well. And Wilma, you're 100% right in what you're saying. It's having the conversation. It's not what you say, but it's how you say it or how you project it. And it is so important to realize that we should have a resolution, not a conflict resolution, but just to have a resolution to deal with conflict. And that's why I say too many people, when they, even in courses that I've done in the corporate environment, and you go on a conflict resolution course, all they talk to you is they don't leave you with an actual a method. They show you that you must go through a process, but it doesn't say at the end of the process, what is the result? And even Stephen Covey says you must look for a win-win situation. And that's great to look for a win-win situation, but it's actually a win-win win situation. So it has to have 3 wins. I must feel like I've been heard, and I feel like, okay, I've won on this. Ant must feel exactly the same, but then the issue needs to feel like it's been won, so that we know exactly what to do. Anybody else want to add anything? Yes, George. Okay, Liz, go for it, and then George.
Good evening, everyone. Very good again. When I had the teenagers at home, and I would come home a little bit later because the one was still at high school and the other one was at college, and I was teaching. So I'd come home later than them, and then there was an issue or something like that. I'd always say to them, we need to have a family meeting. I had a round table, but we would make dinner first. And after we'd had dinner, even if there's thick mouths and atmosphere while we're eating, and then afterwards we'll clear the table, and then we'll sit down and then have the family meeting, have the discussion.
Good.
And I saw my son doing this the other day. When something happened, I'm like, sure, well, we must watch what we do, because they definitely duplicate what we've taught them. So yes, that worked for me, because you can't, I'm alone. So there's nobody else. There's no father figure, nothing. I have to take control of this. So it was like, let's have a family meeting. So he called a family meeting the other day.
I love it.
Wonderful.
I love it. That's
Wonderful.
so awesome. We also had in fact, in Anthony's book, How to Get Your Dad Degree, we refer to the round table as well, because our dining room table was also round. So we just called it the round table, the Knights of the Round Table. Awesome. Thanks, Liz.
See, Leonie also agrees with. She's a,
Fan of family meetings
Yeah.
as well. Awesome. George, go for it.
I just want to actually emphasize what you guys said it at some stage, is that also had to be an arbiter, or what do you call it in English?
Arbitrator. Yeah.
Arbitrator or whatever. Well, in my previous work situations where you had to solve problems, and what you guys said there is that before you try and solve a fight, put the rules down on paper and call it a contract.
Yeah.
Of the well, fight, or whatever you want to call it, but make a contract, and both parties sign it, and on that thing you say, don't swear, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that.
Awesome. Love it.
And they sign it, and then you put it one side, and then the argument can start. And like one person speaks at a time, and it's not about, it's not supposed to chip in and try to talk him down or whatever the case. So that is all rules that you write down, and both parties sign it. And then you put it away. And then if something happens, like Anne said, it's history or whatever the case may be. If it's on there, it's on there. You sign it, you agreed to it. So, and I mean, we did it with the courses we did as well, Michelle, when especially with Barry Mitchell, the rules get put on the board, So that is the rules. You adhere to. If you don't adhere to it, you're out. So that's what. So that works like a charm. It really does. So
awesome.
It's just what I wanted to add there.
Thank you, George. And it is so important. And, one should file the agreement, because it is an agreement. It's a respect agreement on how we're going to do it. So file it there with your marriage certificate. Agree on it. Seriously, I'm very serious about this.
Leonie.
Yes, Leonie, how's it?
Hi, sorry, I was going to be late, but now I can see why the Lord actually made me be in time for this.
Awesome.
I just had a discussion with one of our directors here at the lodge, and it was about how do you fight a godly fight. It's just, and having the discernment when to not fighting, addressing any of this, but have the discernment to realize when you need to step back and let God fight your fight for you.
Wow.
So I just wanted to say this is I'm so excited to share this tomorrow. So
that's amazing.
Thanks for that. Yeah,
that is amazing how and funnily enough, when I was looking for the topic, and I thought to myself, you know what, just because I dealt with so much conflict today. So I thought to myself, you know what, I had to apply this over and over and over again today. And if it wasn't so ingrained in me, and I thought maybe I should share it with you guys. And then I did it all, and I finished around about 6:30. Anthony hops onto a Zoom at 7:00 with a coaching, not a counseling session, but a coaching session with a couple overseas. And And next one he's talking, and next one he starts talking about the fights principle and the conflict resolution. I'm like, well, I was meant to do this because that was like a confirmation. And now you saying this, so it's a different confirmation how although it was something that was relevant for my day and what I had to implement, I thought to myself, hold on a second, it's so valid. And now you've had to deal with it and was teaching it today. So that's so cool. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah. But also what you said, I can actually apply, because what I'm in the middle of, please don't ever die without a will or testament. Don't ever do that. So my brother's estate just landed in my lap, so I'm busy with that, and it's never a pretty thing.
No.
And then when do you, for sanity's sake, when do you fight that fight, and how do you fight that fight, and when do you have the discernment to say, okay, God, I cannot anymore. Now you need to take this fight over. So yeah, no, I'm very excited about getting to that.
Awesome. Okay, and Michelle Rogers says, I definitely need to draft an agreement for me and Michelle. We can have a resolution, no problem. And we just got to write that, so long as we know, Jelly, this is what we are talking about today. Awesome. Thanks, Mish. Anybody else? Marina, Henry, Willie, Tessa, Fernando?
Yes, Michelle, I just want to say it's the bigger picture.
Yeah.
You basically, you went with the flow, you went with the Holy Spirit, where you didn't know, but the Holy Spirit knew what needed to be dealt with tonight.
Amazing.
And you were spot on. And like you say, it's never, for you, it must never be revelation, it must be confirmation.
Exactly. Awesome.
And that's exactly what it was. Spot on, Dol. Spot on.
Awesome. Thanks, Wilma. Cool. Willie.
Are you guys? I think in the beginning.
Oh, it's good to see you up and about. Well done. I'm glad to see you sitting up and about. Well done. Yes, sorry, carry on.
Yes. It's in the beginning of the fight analysis. I think it's important. Both parties has to agree to start with a fight analysis first. It's not, if only one party does that, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
So you can't. But anyway, and then just something for you, Michelle. I hear you that the T is most important for you. It sounds like tune in with Anthony.
Oh, you got it right, buddy. Well done.
Oh, Anthony's going to tune into me.
And just a question for Anthony. And it's interesting for me with the disc analysis, the spread of the 4 personalities. It's only the D that's not so much represented in the others. Only in the
because the D only wants to win. Only a spiritful D will move across to the compromise and the contemplating. Yeah,
they just understand one thing: winning is the only language they understand.
Yeah. So they must understand the fight analysis first.
Yeah, agreed.
No, that's true.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, obviously, if you think about when you have a fight, where does it look like Beirut and sound like Beirut? Where there are D's, because it's loud.
Yeah.
Things crash and things break. Okay, there's ways. I mean, here's why the poor D's and I's, I sometimes feel sorry for them, because when they sin, everybody sees it. But when the C's and S's sin, nobody bloody knows.
So true.
Okay, so I'm just telling you, it's just a fact of life.
Awesome.
Yes, thanks.
Thanks so much, Willie. Anton, do you want to say anything? Tessa, do you want to type anything? Henry? Fernando?
Dr. Michelle. Sorry.
Okay, Henry, go.
I can definitely say I learned a lot of things tonight to help me in, because I'm so scared of conflict, and to not, on how I can resolve issues without having to fear conflict.
100%. Awesome. And Henry, it's all about when you wait for the emotions to go down, and then maybe a week later even to go down and sit with the person and say, look, I would like to discuss, and then clarify what that is, and say, and the reason why I would like to do this is so that it doesn't happen again. And then nobody can argue with that, you know. So awesome.
Yes.
Well done. Nice
Thank
one.
you.
Thanks, Henry. Fernando?
I was just going to say, that's why the I's always come with a bigger hammer than what the D's do.
Absolutely.
They want
Make
to
the
do the
loudest noise.
style.
Make the loudest noise. Awesome. Thanks.
This fight really is actually very, very interesting because, yeah, if you don't find a resolution and you don't find a solution to everything,
Yeah.
it eats you up.
It does.
And it never gets solved, and it'll eat you up from inside because you'll always have that anger till it actually comes out somehow.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is actually a very good solution.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Nice one. I want to ask a question because I saw earlier on, Michelle actually referred to, and she went like this with her hand, like timeout. What was that for? Maybe just explain the principle.
Sorry, what was it? I'm reading Anton's reply here.
Okay. You earlier on in your teaching, you actually went like this and you went like timeout. Can you maybe just explain the principle?
So timeout, it's like, especially if you're at a space, for example, and body language is really, really good, because sometimes some people don't hear you. So if you're wanting the person to stop saying what they're saying, or listen, I'm not ready to discuss this conversation now, use your timeout principle. I mean, if you see them in the basketball field, they like call timeout, the coach calls timeout, and the reason is because the team needs to come back together. So don't say to someone, look, I don't want to, because what we have a tendency is like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And the moment you do that, you come across as the aggressor. So it's rather take your hands towards yourself and say, listen, yeah, time out, I can't handle it right now. That's a much gentler way than saying, back off, I can't do this right now. And so it's a nice, and everybody understands the timeout principle. So it's time, and once you say time out, you say, listen here, time out, I can't discuss this right now. I'm going to go to the room. I'm going to go debrief myself. I'm just going to go and sit and cry. I'm going to go to the shop. I'm going to go and do this. But when I come back and when I'm calmer, let's discuss this. So with time out, it's important to always communicate time and place. Okay. And the reason why we discovered this is because, yeah, I've got some time to tell you, is because Ant and I are in a second marriage, and Ant's ex-wife came and dropped off the children, his two children, to stay with us, and then they ended up staying with us. So we now all of a sudden went from one child that was with us, then my son that same year decided he no longer wanted to go to boarding school, so suddenly we had two children. Then all of a sudden we had another two, so we had four children within a space of 1 month. We were in a tiny place. It was ridiculous. We had to convert the garage into 2 rooms. That's how small the place was. Anyway, Ant and I had an argument, and the kids, or we had made a decision on something, but the kids were angry with us. Okay, they were livid with us. And oh, that's right, we had to, they had done something wrong. So we decided that they needed to be punished. So we disciplined and gave them the punishment that needed to be done. But they were so angry with us that, and then Anthony was upset. So he went for a run. So he went off into the car. He took a run, and off he went into town. I had no clue where he went. Now I'm left with 4 angry teenagers, or young, early teens. And I walk past the bedroom and they're having a meeting. Okay, so these 4 kids are now having a meeting, and they're discussing how they can divorce us, because they think it's unfair that we've put them in this situation because we got divorced. And now this is them 4 talking like this. And I'm like, I was horrified. So I burst into tears. So I decide I'm now going to go and find Anthony. So I don't get into a car, I get on my bicycle. So I'm cycling around Pinetown, trying to work out what darn route he took to running. And I look like a hysterical female, of which I was, sobbing on a bicycle. I found him. Now I'm cycling behind him and he's running, and I'm trying to tell him that the children want to divorce us. It was chaos. And this is the reason why we decided we needed to implement stuff like this, because we could not have that reoccur. And that's when we said, okay, time out. So next time, when time out, I'm going for a run. This is the route I'm taking if you need to find me. Time out. I'll be back in an hour. Time out. I'm going to hit balls on the rugby field, or whatever it might be. But we realized that that chaos could not ever happen again. And so we put the godly situation and said, well, how can we prevent it from happening again? And that's when we came up with the timeout, and just, hey, timeout as opposed to timeout. Okay, so that's how come we got to it.
So the agreement is that if any one of the two at that point just feels that emotionally we can't cope right now, we've agreed, number one, we are going to use the fights principle as our methodology. And secondly, we've agreed, if either of the two of us too angry to contribute at that moment, that we don't have to say, I can't deal with this. I just go, and I just say, bedroom, 1 hour.
Yeah.
That's all I do. And I go to the bedroom.
And that's not him sending me to the bedroom. It's him going to the bedroom. Bedroom.
And 1 hour says, I'll be back in an hour to discuss this, because the person who calls time out has to take accountability to come back for the discussion. So you need to go and get yourself under control. Now, I'll be honest with you. I used to have a violent temper. I used to have. So I sent myself to the room. I time out until I've calmed down, go and pray, get myself right. Then I come out and deal with my conflict, because I do not want to be that monster that I know. Don't want to be it.
Yes, George.
This is now all good and well, this fight solving principle. This is now for afterwards.
Yes. That's why, George, you need to discuss it beforehand and say, when we get angry, this is what we're going to do. So that's why you need to find the space to discuss.
That normally doesn't work.
Exactly. So you're going to have to say, look, yeah, we're in a relationship. We're two different people. We're going to fight. Okay. So instead of our fights becoming ugly, how do we actually enter into them? And because our fight became so ugly, and because of the chaos, we decided that there's no ways we're role modeling that to our kids. So how do we go through the fights principle? And the one time Peter was lying on the couch, and we were sitting in the dining room, and we didn't know that he was actually in the lounge, and we had a complete disagreement, resolved the conflict, came up with a resolution, high-fived each other, said, cool, let's keep going, documented that that's the way we were going to solve that issue should it happen again. And Peter stood up and said, did you two just have a fight? And we said, yeah. And he said, cool, that was a good way of doing it. So it is about, but you've got it, George. You can only do it when you're not in that angry space.
Yeah, because when you're angry, you're angry. It's gonna
for
go.
Sure. For sure. Then it's time out and go to the bedroom or go wherever.
So
no, but you're right.
You have to start there, because it's easy to sort it out afterwards, but at the time it happens, it's not that easy. So that is something to remember.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And that is why exactly like the workplace scenario that you used early on when you arbitrate. You can't arbitrate when the two people are angry. You have to wait for them to simmer down the next day, call them in, sit down and talk it. So, but they know there's an arbitration process. Yeah, exactly. If you don't know, don't fight, you don't grow. It's true. Awesome, guys. Thank you for participating. And yeah.
Fernando, I love your comment. Just to conclude last week's, and just for a wrap up last week, Fernando has nailed it on the head, saying, fights happens after you find out who has the bigger hammer.
Oh, awesome, guys.
Guys, we love you, and we're having fun once a week with you. My wish is just if you take this and make it practical and live it in your life.
Yeah.
Honestly, this one I can tell you we live. And it's helped us a lot.
Over and over and over again, especially when you start getting heated up, it's then, calm down. But awesome. So thanks for sharing, guys. Yes, George.
I've got a spare 2-pounder here, Michelle. It's bigger than yours.
Okay. Not a 5, but a 2. I'm going to get it.
Good. That's it's only a normal claw hammer you've got there, but I've got a 2-pounder.
Lekker. Now I know where to go. Awesome, guys. Thanks for sharing. God bless and chat to you all next week.
Have a great week,
Thanks,
everybody.
Cheers, guys.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Doc.
Pleasure.
you.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.